Alrighty, everyone. This is meteorologist Timmy Albertson here with you guys for tonight's weather chat. As I've been mentioning the past couple of days, for those of you who maybe want your own meteorologist, your own personalized forecast, and 24-hour availability for any weather questions or even during severe weather or anything like that, why don't you head on over to americasweathersc.com. We are offering now personalized forecasts for individuals. And if you do decide that you want that, you can use promo code STARTER23 to get a little bit of a discount. Again, here at AWSC, there's more than just me. There's a lot more than just me. I'm not even the one in charge. With that in mind, we're all degree meteorologists. We all have experience forecasting. I was in broadcast for about 8 years and graduated back in 2016 from Penn State with a degree in meteorology. And we got some people on our staff who worked with the National Weather Service. So we got a great team. So again, if it's something that you might be interested in, head on over there and give it a look. And if you do, and you do decide that you want it, and hey, if you live in Wisconsin or Minnesota, I'm one of the forecasters for that area. So you'll have me. All right, with that in mind, everyone, let's go ahead and take a look over at the good old surface chart here. We got our area of low pressure that is hanging out across the central part of the United States. Not quite as strong as it was last night, but it is still making its way along here. And as we talked about yesterday, we are watching as the cold front was kind of approaching the warm front. Well, during the overnight hours, that cold front did begin to overrun the warm front, cutting off the inflow, the air that the main center of low pressure at the surface was feeding off of. And as I mentioned, we tend to see that happen, especially in a system like how this one is set up. A lot of times, even though that initial area of low pressure may begin to weaken, we'll oftentimes see a new area of low pressure developing just off towards the east. And that is exactly what we've had now. We have this little center of low pressure here, at least as of the last chart. Let's make sure this is the most recent one. Yep, there it is. So again, right over Iowa right now, here's the old low pressure. There's the new low pressure. Again, not quite as strong as it was last night, but it's still enough to get the job done here. And as a matter of fact, this area of low pressure is likely going to be continuing to track its way towards the east. As we head through the overnight tonight and going into the day tomorrow, it'll be bringing some rain across parts of the Great Lakes going into the northeast and part of the mid-Atlantic there. Kind of a little bit of a double cold front here, at least on this particular surface analysis, just kind of an extra push coming in through here. But all things considered, this, you get the idea, is kind of the main system. Now, much like yesterday when we were taking a look at the weather map, we were talking about how there were some strong storms down across parts of Nebraska and Kansas earlier yesterday afternoon. Well, today we did see at least some strong thunderstorms across parts of Iowa. It did not look like there was any confirmed tornadoes. There was at least one tornado warning at one point and a tornado watch that was in effect, but it looks like it just didn't quite reach the kind of the level the storms were yesterday across parts of Nebraska, albeit they were still some strong storms with certainly some gusty winds. Nonetheless, we also saw some rain showers across parts of the upper Midwest. As we talked about a couple days ago, a little bit of overrunning was taking place. We got a lot of warm, moist air that's being lifted over the cooler air mass that is in place up towards the north. And again, that kind of produces that steady, stratiform rain that we see with some of these systems there on the northern edge. So what's going to be happening with those rain showers? Well, again, we can see them already working their way through Indiana, going back into parts of Illinois. These rain showers will continue to track their way towards the east, and it is looking like we'll be seeing, if not a steady rain in some parts of the Northeast and Great Lakes tomorrow, at least certainly some scattered rain showers. Now, it's going to vary depending upon exactly where you are. But for those of you who like to watch college football, it's looking like it probably will be a rainy one for the Penn State game, at least. So we'll probably take a look at that while the game is happening. Obviously, I'm a Penn Stater myself, so I'll be watching that game, and I'll be seeing some rain. So if you're wondering, if you're watching any games tomorrow and your team happens to be playing somewhere out in the Northeast or in the Great Lakes area, and there's some rain showers, well, it's courtesy of our good friend here, this area of low pressure. So let's take a look here over to, let's take a look here kind of at what this system is doing in the upper levels here. And if we were to flip over, by the way, this is analysis here of where that low pressure might be kind of right now, and it looks like that new center is pretty much right over near the Davenport area with the old center right about back here. Again, you can see these isobars here, lines of constant pressure. We're looking at the surface here, are very tight together. It's a very windy evening. Here in Minnesota, well, actually, I'm technically in Wisconsin side of the Duluth Metro, but regardless, it's a pretty breezy one here. I was over at the lake, up at Lake Superior earlier on this afternoon. We had some good waves there, certainly not as high as I've seen the waves there before, but it was a bit of a breezy one today. We had gusts at the Duluth airport about 40 miles an hour or so during the afternoon. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the breeziness that we are seeing across parts of the upper plains and parts of the upper Midwest. Again, if we were to kind of go back to our surface map here, you could see that there is an area of high pressure over the Canadian prairies, and that is kind of producing a little bit of a tight pressure gradient here, and that's why we have some of those gusty winds. Now, those winds are probably going to be increasing across the Great Lakes and going into the Northeast as we head through the overnight tonight, but more so going into the day tomorrow. And then especially on some of the higher elevations, could maybe be seeing a little bit extra of some of the breezy conditions there, just given the fact that some mountains out there with the way that the air flows over those mountains. So interesting thing there. One thing I did want to point out here, let's take a look at one of the forecast models. We'll head over to the College of DuPont. Yeah. Sorry, DuPage. I always get DuPage and DuPont mixed up. Anyways, this is a particular forecast map, and actually what we're looking at here is the surface temperature, and I believe this is for the NAM. And I just kind of want to show you a little bit here of what we could be seeing across parts of the Appalachian Mountains as we head into the day tomorrow. So going into the overnight tonight, if we were to go back to our surface chart here, we have this little extension of the high pressure that's going to kind of seep its way in to part of the northern Appalachian Mountains. And what that's going to do is it's going to obviously bring in some cooler air. So we can see as we go into the overnight tonight, those temperatures dropping probably down into the 40s, at least if we go based off this particular model. Obviously, without having looked at some of the other data, I'm not going to give exact numbers, but you get the overall idea, kind of some cooler air mass. Take a look, though, southern Ohio, temperatures are only going to be down in the upper 50s, possibly as we go into the overnight hours there. So that's that, warm, moist air kind of continuing to flow in from that center of low pressure. There's the center of low pressure, at least according to this model, as we go into very early tomorrow morning. So you notice how these temperatures get pretty cool down here. And if you've ever been to this area, a lot of times what happens in this setup is that colder air gets locked into some of those valleys and just kind of, obviously colder air is a bit harder to move than warmer air. And so a lot of times what we see is kind of the colder air itself kind of gets locked in a little bit here. Now, mind you, there's going to be increasing clouds as we go probably into the day tomorrow across a lot of this area. So those temperatures are not going to be rising much, and we're going to be having that rain moving through. And take a look here, you can see temperatures only hanging out in the 40s by the time we get towards maybe late tomorrow morning across parts of Pennsylvania. And then if we advance it a little bit further here, you can see as we go into late tomorrow afternoon and into the evening, temperatures still pretty steady in the 40s across much of Pennsylvania. Now, what's a little bit hard to see here on this map, so we'll zoom it out just a little bit, as you can see that this is the center of the low pressure. And again, you can kind of follow it along with your eyes with a little tight circle there. And again, we can see as we go into Saturday morning, that low pressure somewhere maybe near over Ohio. We're also going to see maybe kind of another little area of low pressure developing across South Carolina later on in the day. And eventually those two will kind of meet up, and eventually we'll kind of see that low reorganizing itself as it crosses over the Appalachians. But the main thing here to keep in mind, as you can see, this temperature gradient runs kind of parallel with I-70 through Ohio. I always call it the I-70 curse because I'm a winter lover, and if you go south of I-70, generally you don't see as much winter weather as they see in the northern part of Ohio. But that's just a little fun term I give it there. It's just a coincidence. People sometimes think that, oh, well, the road and yada. No, it's just a coincidence sometimes. Now, if you're on I-90 in Cleveland, or if you're on I-90 in Pennsylvania, they put it right up on the ridge in Erie County. So that's oftentimes for forecasting kind of a boundary marker that we would use around that area because it sits kind of right on top of a ridge. So when the lake effect snow happens, especially in the early season, the early part of the season, you tend to see rain when you go north of I-7 or I-90, and then snow when you go south of I-90. And again, that's just because of the elevation difference. But again, Anyways, moving rapidly along, see how those temperatures stay steady. You can see how that warm front associated with this area of low pressure does not really advance to the north throughout the day. It just kind of more or less is stalled out, and we can kind of see how right now it's trying to move a little bit, but as mentioned, it'll probably stall out somewhere kind of close to I-70 as we go into the day tomorrow, and that's going to kind of keep those temperatures a little bit cooler across parts of Pennsylvania. Again, not only that, but getting a little bit of assistance from that little area of low pressure, so you can see how overall throughout the day those temperatures don't really rise too much across most of Pennsylvania. And part of this is because of those mountains that are in the way. You can see how it does kind of lift a little bit more into Ohio, but really once you get into the Appalachian Mountains, that colder air is kind of locked in place up there. And then when that new center of low pressure kind of develops or reorganizes, the system will then continue on. So let's take a look at what this looks like, at least WPC surface map there from the Weather Service. Again, as we go into the overnight hours, that center of low pressure tracks its way through Indiana. There's the rain. As we go into the overnight hours, heading into the day tomorrow, again, you can see those showers continuing. Again, there's that frontal boundary. Doesn't really, is not able to really make its way further up towards the north. And there's that secondary area of low pressure developing out of the Carolinas. Eventually, those two will meet up, and that will actually probably allow for that low pressure to, at least at the surface, to kind of maybe begin to intensify a bit more, but ultimately it's going to move offshore by the time we get to Sunday, but we could still have a few maybe lingering rain showers around because our good friend, the upper level low associated with that, is still going to be hanging around parts of the Great Lakes before it just kind of redevelops into kind of a much larger upper level trough off the New England coast and then continues on from there. So for those of you who don't know what I was just talking about, again, watch a couple other weather chats. We talked about some of these maps here a little bit more in depth there. So I just kind of want to give you guys a quick little update. That's what we're seeing this evening here. Obviously, our area of low pressure is still doing its job, trying to even out, temperatures and everything across, the whole atmosphere. But, as I mentioned, low pressures generally don't succeed in that because of a lot of other factors. But that's kind of what's going on right now. Otherwise, kind of quiet across the United States, not really seeing much in the way of severe weather. And again, we'll probably not really be seeing much severe weather tomorrow either. Maybe a couple of storms closer to that frontal boundary, but all things considered, it'll just generally be a rain event, especially across parts of the Northeast. So with that in mind, everyone, we'll take a look at maybe some of the weather conditions for some of those football games as we go into the day tomorrow. But otherwise, in the meantime, since it's Friday night, we'll go ahead and consider this to be a pretty decent length weather chat here. And I'll see you guys all back here tomorrow evening or sometime during the day tomorrow. We'll take a look at some of the weather for some of those ongoing football games, and we'll see how our little low pressure is doing. So I hope you all have a good rest of your evening, everyone, and take care.